I understand that this dialogue is only one event, but we need more and more to be known, to be heard. What are our needs? What could we propose? Where we can be mutually beneficial, exchanging some ideas, etc., etc. So I think that this dialogue only the one part of a bigger dialogue. You know, we need to continue giving this information about Ukraine, because I understand that media covering only the disastrous events, and there is not much information about what is going on in cultural sphere. If we are talking about independent artists, a lot of them have families, and they are moving, protecting their children to some safe parts of Ukraine. So many of them has left eastern part of Ukraine, like Kharkiv and Zaporizhzhia, Kherson. They moved to the western part. Of course, it's not easy to find premises to continue your artistic activity. It's not so easy. So first of all, we are connecting them to some institutions which could provide, for example, studios for artists. Some of them have stayed in Kiev or in central part of Ukraine and continue their work. But of course, for some time, I should say, many of them were silent because they just cannot express themselves in the horrific circumstances, you know. And now they are more and more producing new works, and actually we are having some independent institutions like civic organizations, etc., etc., they are gathering these collections because museums now are not buying these works, but independent sector, they are collecting these works just to preserve this unique period of time when the artists have changed their artistic activity dramatically. So they are changing their means of expressing, even changing their techniques, methodology, etc., etc. So first of all, for the artist, it's the vital thing. It's the place where they can work and the money to live on, you know, to feed their families. So it's you know, some kind of a double life, because on the one hand they need to continue their artistic activity, and on the other hand they just need to find some resources to live on. So sometimes it's they're shifting to other professions, for example, or taking their activity in some other spheres for business, for something else, just to have their wages. If we are talking about employees of the theaters or orchestras, musicians, choirs, etc., etc., most of them are supported from local or state budget. So they continue their work and their activity happily, but they have, institutions, they have no resources to create something new. So they're continuing to give performances of what was created, like last season, last years, etc., etc. So this is, to one extent, it's just continuing to be active, not to lose their forms professionally. And on the other hand, they're also seeking some ways of creating something new, something which is connected with our circumstances right at the moment. So I should say that the daily life of artists in Ukraine has changed dramatically. And now they're not only artists, but the ordinary citizens of Ukraine who just search ways to live on. The most urgent need is surely protection. Protection of our heritage, movable and immovable. And this sphere could be divided in sub-spheres. I mean, that materials, some funds and expertise provided to Ukrainian museums and Ukrainian institutions, how they can survive, because winter is coming, you know, and that's the main problem for now, because a lot of buildings, they're damaged or destroyed. those who are destroyed with, I don't know, broken windows or destroyed roof, etc., etc. We need to conserve these buildings in order to protect them for further restoration in future. But now, if we won't do this at the moment, they will just disappear during this season. I think that's the most urgent need for the moment. Second one is, I should say that providing some financial support to independent artists, writers, actors, musicians, composers in Ukraine. Because they are staying, as I said previously, they need to find some other ways of living, and to continue their artistic activity, they just need to have some kind of, I don't know, grants for some projects, some cooperation with institutions, etc. So we need this support in Ukraine, because we have a lot of support abroad, but in Ukraine we need to have this kind of I don't know, to have the security for these people in Ukraine, because they are living there and they are continue to work there. And the third thing, I think, it's connected with international sphere, of course. We still continue to fight with Russian propaganda, and we're still fighting for our place in history, in world culture, because still Russian avant-garde, which is think of Russian avant-garde, a lot of artists were Ukrainians, in fact, and nobody knows about this. So we need to have this informational campaign, and here we need support. I mean, on readiness to hear us, because sometimes this kind of a propaganda for years has created a certain view, and even, I don't know, on average European, they do not know Ukraine before the 24th of February. They know that post-Soviet countries, which is Russia, the main of, and everything which is connected to Ukraine was thought through the eyes of Russian. So we need to have our own look to our history, to our culture, to who we are and what our culture, which is distinctiveness of it, etc., etc. So this readiness to hear us and readiness to provide some platforms for our speakers and leaders of opinion, and to have these platforms and stages just to share this information with the whole world. We are struggling even within Ukrainian government for supporting culture as a vital and strategic priority for the programming of everything else. We understand that social security, we understand that economy and everything else connected, and defense, of course, now are the most prioritized spheres. But we are struggling even within Ukraine for advocating that culture is the most strategic sphere you should be laying on, especially when this war is actually the war against our cultural identity. It's denying our right to be the country with our own history, our own culture, our own language, our own literature, etc., etc. So if we are connecting all this together, I mean, freedom of expression, culture, sustainability, education. Unfortunately, I should say that for Ukraine, it's now, it's not received by the whole society as the most urgent. So if we are talking about the results for my colleagues from other countries, for me, it's first of all advocating why it's important. And I understand when we are talking about this question with our colleagues, for them it's long past. They're already done this dialogue within their countries, within their societies, etc., etc. So for us, it's probably only the first steps when the government policy in Ukraine should be changed, taking into account this priority as the most urgent and the most vital for the surviving and actually for the victory.